Hello and welcome back to another episode of Flutter Original. So every time in Flutter Original, well, we have some kind of authors that they kind of coding, or of course, my new author today is also coding, but the way that he is coding is different because he's coding to teach you how to code better. So I have Andrea with me today, who is pretty well known in the Flutter community for creating amazing courses and content for Flutter and Dart developers. Let's welcome Andrea. How are you today?
Hi. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you very much for having me. I don't really do these sessions very often, but yeah, I think there's probably so many interesting things to talk about, and I guess what I've seen with your amazing show is that you do a lot of technical content, and like a lot of the interviews are always very interesting. Um, and I guess the content creation side, it's a bit like a meta topic in a way. Like you don't really get to hear a lot about what goes into making like courses, content, and a lot of that. So yeah, just happy to be here and share some of my thoughts, I guess.
It is actually for me, it's very interesting and exciting because I also do like some from time to time, not as you, like as a professional, let's say career, creating course and content. And I know like how long it takes to produce maybe 5 minute video for a course. And I wanted to share this with like others and audiences and tell them like, if you want to get into this field, you need to know probably how it is difficult. And maybe after that, they also appreciate, you and content creators. So tell me, Andrea, how did you get into this field and what's your background and why Flutter and Dart? I remember
Yeah,
you started a couple of years ago.
yeah. I actually started quite a bit longer. Maybe people started noticing me more like in recent times, but yeah. So I guess before Flutter, I mean, yeah, I studied computer science and all of that. I came to the UK in 2008 and just started working for various companies. So I guess like startups, agencies, various kinds of companies here. Um, so I guess yeah, a good place to work, especially in London. And then, like over time, I started getting this feeling that I don't quite want to work for someone else. And so first I went from kind of being an employee to being more like a contractor freelancer. And so I guess just to buy a bit more freedom in terms of choosing what kind of work I want to do. And I was quite happy doing that for a few years. So at the time, I was doing a lot of iOS development. So yeah, all the Apple SDKs, working a lot with the UI kit. Obviously, iOS development was a pretty hot topic back then, and is still now.
Mhm.
And then how I got into Flutter was actually quite curious because in 2018 I was doing a contract job for an agency in London, and at some point they moved me into a project which was to be made with Flutter, and at the time I didn't know anything about it. But my tech lead was very kind of keen to push this forward, and he had enough influence back then to I guess convince both the agency and the client to go for Flutter. So I guess that was my first experience, and what was really good about it is that was at a time when there were no Flutter jobs at all, and so it was just me and a small team just figuring things out. I think we were still on the first beta, so it was quite interesting. Like a lot of the plugins were really not production ready. We were still writing like product platform channels code at the time because we had not many packages to do the things we wanted to do. But I was quite amazed how at the time, even with the little resources we have, we managed to build like this proof of concept in like a couple of weeks. And it was like an app for receipt scanning, so it was quite cool because we had some like native code integrations already, and how we managed to get it running so quickly, and also the whole declarative approach, all the hot reloading stuff. So I think for me something clicked back then, and I thought the developer experience is so much better than what I'm used to in terms of speed, and also yeah, just being able to do multi-platform is quite amazing. um and so, but that, it was still like a job that I was doing, and I didn't have much of a feeling for how much wider interest there was for people to start with this new framework. So what I did was I started writing some articles on Medium and started doing some YouTube videos. And at the time, I already had a blog, so I was already kind of blogging tech stuff for a few years, but quite irregularly. And when Flutter came out, I started kind of trying to pace myself and do it a bit more often. So in terms of blogging, I already had a bit of experience, but with YouTube, it was completely new for me. I had no idea what were, I guess, good ways or best practices to make compelling YouTube video. Nothing like that. I just was trying things out, and I thought I might just as well do a screencast and maybe a little bit of scripting, but for the most part, it was kind of raw and just me saying, okay, let's see if we can build, I don't know, an email sign up form, or let's explore, I guess, the Flutter widgets, layout widgets, animations, various kind of things. And at the time already, I realized there was a lot of interest. Like the reception was very good, even though my content and style maybe wasn't like very very good at the time. But I definitely had a very strong signal there that people were interested in this. And obviously Google behind it, they soon afterwards they started going with the Flutter 1 version. They did Flutter Live, so they started putting a lot of push behind it. And so the community started to grow from there, and I was, I guess, lucky to join in at the right time. I think it's just that for me it clicked that that was going to be a big thing, because having tried it as a developer, I could see the power of it, and so I was in for it. So yeah, it was I guess, yeah, having a good start with it. Even though at the time I was just doing free content, I wasn't even planning much on doing paid content initially, but it was good to see a lot of validation early on.
That's interesting. It's almost the same story for me when I introduced to Flutter as well. Like it clicked a couple of years ago when it was beta, and there's okay, this is Oreca. I remember I said Oreca, I found it. This is it, what I want. But Andrea, so um, well, based on what you said, you never had any experience with content creation, I guess. But then you started doing this as your professional career.
Yeah.
How do you feel this? I think you faced lots of bumps in between. So can you maybe introduce us to content creation and
Yeah. So
how's life with that?
yeah. So I think what really, like sometimes you go through various journeys in your, I guess, professional life or whatever it is, and sometimes you come across things that make you have a different take on things. So for me, it was that every year, Stack Overflow releases their developer survey into the industry, and the one that I read back then when I was starting with Flutter is how basically the vast majority of people in the industry have 0 to 5 years of experience, because obviously there are a lot of newcomers.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was already coding for like over 10 years, and I was already, yeah, I mean, doing a lot of like contract work. I was fairly well established in the iOS community, at least in London, in terms of being able to find jobs. So I thought, I mean, at least I have above average experience, and I can see if I. And at the same time, because I had a bit of background with doing blogging and all of that, I thought one thing I would really like to do is become better as an educator. And so if I can take some of that experience and I guess formulate it in a way that can help people learn and maybe progress faster, then it's going to be valuable. So so then what I decided to do is I was still kind of doing part-time contracting, and I kept doing that for another couple of years. But yeah, on the side, I started kind of building up a bit more of like my presence online in terms of articles and YouTube videos. And then later on, I started going more into like Twitter and LinkedIn recently, and just trying to have a bit of a presence on the various platforms. And at some point, I think I had enough validation for there is an interest in this that I thought I should make a course. And I think that was the bit that in a way was a little bit tricky.
All right. So this is interesting because that is actually the way that I was also introduced to Flutter. Like I clicked a couple of years ago when it was beta, and I just also get into this field and community. But Andrea, you mentioned that you didn't have any experience of creating content. I know like it's a lot of work to produce 2 minutes video, and sometimes it's like hours and days just to create 5 minute video trainings video. So how is the life of being a content creator? How did you come up with this? How are you feeling right now? And what are the bumps, or what were the bumps in this path of being content creator?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess I always, aside from the idea of being a developer, I always thought there would be some value in trying to be an educator as well. And at the beginning, you don't really set off thinking, "Oh, I'm just gonna be an instructor full time," or at least it wasn't for me. At the beginning, I was just sharing some of the things that I was learning, and I guess having a bit of method to try to get better at the content that I was making. But I was still kind of working part time as a contractor, and so it was more a case of, wow, people are interested in some of the stuff that I'm making, and what can I do with it. So I think for the entirety of the first year, I was just doing free content, and so that was blogging, and also just trying to find my hand at YouTube as well, which definitely video was completely new for me as a format. Um, but I guess at the time also I saw that there were many popular courses on Udemy, and not knowing much about the entire education industry, I thought, oh, okay, this is what people are doing. So I kind of enrolled in a few courses. I learned also some stuff outside of Flutter, taking courses. So I thought, yeah, this seems like a reasonable format for me to do. So and so seeing that there was some interest, I thought, okay, okay, I guess that's what people are doing. So I'll do an Udemy course. And yeah, and I think some of the advice that goes around is when you start, you should really start with something small so that it's not too overwhelming. And I went completely the opposite way, and like my first course was gigantic, and because I was doing it part-time, it took me maybe 1 year to finish. um, and but it that at the time was still one of the first few courses that was on Udemy about Flutter. So I guess timing was on my side, and I kind of started getting a bit of sales from that, which was encouraging. Um, and but for me, like the whole idea about how do you turn this into a business was still very vague, and I didn't really know. Like doing more courses was a way, I guess, to proceed. But like at the same time, I realized that however much money I was making on Udemy, it wasn't really that much compared to having a developer job. So I thought, obviously, there's something that I'm missing here, and that's when I kind of started learning a bit about marketing and a bit of all the other things that go into creating your own brand and business. And so I went from just, I guess, publishing things that I was interested in to having a bit more of a strategy. And I thought, oh, actually, if I create a newsletter and send people valuable stuff, then I'm gonna have those people with me for the journey in the long run. So at the beginning, I wasn't even that good in terms of what is a good email that people would find valuable. I was also maybe trying, like sometimes people are afraid to sell their stuff. Sometimes they go the opposite way and they say, oh, just buy my stuff. So I was just trying to figure all that out. But I think it was also crucial that I found a very good community for developer and content creators at the time, called Blogging for Devs. And the whole idea it was this tight knit group of individuals who were also blogging about various different types of topics. And from there, I got to learn a lot about newsletter and SEO and a lot of the things that go into more broadly the content side of things. Um, and also that's when I kind of launched my website, and I started. At the time, I think I actually started shifting a bit away from YouTube and more into writing articles and long form content, which actually worked out quite well for me. I did reach a point in YouTube where I was just like, most of my videos are not doing too well, and I don't know why. And I don't even know how people are doing things successfully because I never even spent time thinking too much about optimization and what you have to optimize for when you do YouTube videos. so I was getting to a stage where I was a bit burned out, just making videos and not being too happy with the result. And I thought, yeah, like you said, video content is so much work. So I thought I'm just gonna put YouTube on hold for a little bit and try to focus on the written content. And that seems to be something that I enjoy doing more anyway. Um, and so I started sharing articles a bit more regularly. I started getting a bit more clued up about SEO and like newsletter stuff. And the other big shift in mindset was yeah, like selling courses on Udemy. I guess you can get a big audience, but you don't really have any degree of control to how you market to that audience. And if you want to do it for the long term, then I guess I kind of realized that's not, there's a lot of creators out there that don't do that. And so what are they doing instead? So I tried to figure out what are the people that are, I guess, are ahead of me by a few years and how they're running that as a business. And so I started being a bit more systematic about it and try to come up with my own strategy. And so eventually I ended up kind of starting creating courses on Teachable. It's just one of the many platforms. Um, and with that, the whole idea of, okay, once people find out about me, how do I get them to go on my website and read my articles and see if any of them will be interested in receiving that content by email, which like sometimes developers feel bad about asking for emails. But looking at it from the perspective of what newsletters am I signed up to, and just like as long as the content is valuable and interesting to me, I don't mind giving my email. And so I started focusing a lot more on that. And then it's just a case, I think, of just figuring out what are all the pieces that need to fit together. And I think a big part of it is, yeah, giving away a lot of good content for free, which I try to do to this day. And then if people trust you with the content, after a while you can say, okay, now I'm launching a course, and if you like what you see, like you can enroll, and that there's going to be more in-depth content there. So that's kind of what I did. And a big shift in mindset for me was also going from selling courses for $10 on Udemy to now over 100. But they are kind of courses where I guess I'm also trying to shift a bit away from beginner kind of stuff to more intermediate advanced. And so realizing that there is an audience for that, and people that are able to afford those courses. So it's been kind of a part of a journey, and also breaking up some mental barriers and kind of figuring out, yes, you can do a lot of free content, you can do paid content that is worth your while. And I guess a side of it is, if the paid content goes well, it's then a business that you can reinvest into, and it gives you more confidence to spend more time creating better content. And I think it's hard to get to that point if you're just doing it on the side and just doing little article here and there. It's hard to be consistent. But when you're doing it as a business and it goes reasonably well, then you feel like I can invest even a few months of my time creating a course because I know that there is demand for it. So it was a long journey. Like some of the time it was a bit kind of on the burnout side of things, in terms of this is not getting anywhere, or like why am I doing this? Because as a developer I could do a lot better. But I guess it was a case of learning all the things that I didn't know, and now having that, I have a much better idea of what I should be doing going forward.
That's interesting. So, well, let's. You talked about a few things here, like burnouts and stuff like that. I want you to give audiences like a rough idea of, like, let's say one of your courses. Maybe you can share your courses right now with us, and I can ask some question. I want to know, like, one of the courses. Let's say not even the longest one of the shortest one, which you maybe 2-3 hours, let's say, you published. How long usually takes for you to create, like, 2-3 hours, let's say, a course that you can then sell? So, and maybe you also talk about the course as well if you want. I mean, just stage is yours.
Yeah. I think at the moment I don't actually any courses on sale that are less than 7 hours. I used to have some shorter ones, but I guess invariantly, like with tech, some of the time things get outdated, and at some point I was like, I need to figure out exactly what is the kind of content that I can create and keep up to date, and know that I will invest time in. And for sure, like going forward, I actually want to make smaller courses, but um, I'm gonna go the other end and tell you like my most popular course is called Flutter Foundations. So yeah, I think this is the most popular course that I have, which came to light because between my client work and some of the training sessions that I was doing with students, I did see people struggling quite a bit with applications where they get a bit more complex, and kind of how to structure things so that code is still kind of clear and easy to follow. And so I saw that there was definitely a need there to teach more about the aspects of like app architecture, state management, testing, and a lot of those things. And so the way I went about it is I sent a survey to all my subscribers saying, okay, I'm gonna be making new courses, and what kind of content should I make, and what kind of topics should I cover. So I collected a good amount of data points there to kind of reinforce the idea of how I should shape the course. And so with the back of that, I had to decide also, like, is it going to be a project-based course? Am I just going to cover individual topics, maybe with smaller apps? So, and I went with kind of what the audience asked, and I ended up like creating like basically this kind of medium-sized e-commerce app where you have all the typical features like product listings, checkout flows, sign in, sign out, orders management, and later on also how do you make payments with like providers such as Stripe and things like that. So I ended up kind of sketching out the whole, I guess, structure of how I wanted the course to be, and I guess working backwards from having a completed project to how do I break it into chunks that I can teach, and what I should teach. So if I break it into chapters, what topics should I teach in each chapter, and then try to create some kind of cohesive curriculum. So long story short, it took me close to probably 10 months or 11 months to create a 14-hour course, which sounds insane. But it's kind of like, I don't even want to say I'm a perfectionist, but it's just like, I don't, having tried doing the YouTube videos where I just wing it and I just try to teach stuff, and I kind of get a bit lost sometimes, and then maybe I recover. I wasn't happy with that style of presentation, which is maybe more natural and shows some of the mistakes. But if I think of this as a resource where I need to take people from point A to point B, I want to give them something that is a bit more structured. And so the way I end up doing courses these days is like I create a demo app maybe, or a project that I will show people how to complete in a course, and then I go back and script it quite heavily, and then I record. So it's a long process of kind of designing the course, scripting it, recording it, editing it. And also when I eventually release the course, I mean, there are for the most part video courses, but I also add a lot of like notes and additional resources. Oftentimes I have articles that go with it. So it's not just a case of watching a video course from beginning to end. Like I do leave a lot of trail in terms of these are the steps that we've taken, and like all of that. Code snippets. I also have like GitHub repository that goes with it. So I try to make it a bit easier for people. And I guess the other thing that I always do these days is that let's see, what is it? Yeah, I have like a Slack community, and I think from day one, anytime I sold something, I always try to have some form of support available for people, and that's I think it's something that is reasonable to offer, and I found that people appreciate that. It takes, I guess, a good chunk of my time, but to me, I think it's worthwhile to have it as part of a course offering. And so when people join, they always get the chance to sign up for this Slack channel. Maybe I'll move to Discord soon when I get a chance. But just the idea of people having direct access to me if they want to ask questions. It's not so much of jump on a call with me. I like everything to be async and like remote.
Yeah.
But by doing it that way, I still get the chance to do a good amount of support for people, maybe a couple of times a day, and hopefully that can help when people get stuck and that sort of thing. And
In
it's not just, I mean, there's other benefits to it as well, because by seeing the questions that people ask, I can then go back and sometimes refine the content or add some additional notes. So, and I guess the other side of it is, yeah, that a course is never done. Like even when I finished with the recordings, there's always things to improve. Maybe there's new package versions, there's things that change all the time. So the bulk of the work is to create it in the first place, but there is a reasonable amount of work that goes into keeping those things up to date. um, but it goes back to what I was saying, that if I can get people to sign up for these courses, and there is enough demand for it, and I can sell them for a certain price, then I do have the resources to invest and keep them up to date and do that, which is something that you normally don't get on the YouTube videos and all of that. And and with that said, like, a lot of the courses are still video based, but I think in the future I'm also looking at experimenting with like new types of format as well, like new kinds of format, and maybe having more like interactive type of content. And there's definitely a lot of things that I can explore, and now I'm starting to find the time to explore, and I'm kind of really excited actually to try some of these new formats as well.
Interesting. So, you mentioned that this course took you like 10 months. And well, as the history of releases in Flutter shows, every like maybe 6 months almost, we have an kind of like a release.
Yeah,
Not always major, but lots of things are changing, depreciated or removed or added.
yeah.
And like, I feel like it's a lot of pain then here, though you spend a lot of time to create a course in 10 months, but then you need to reiterate even every month, let's say, on that. Isn't it the case? Or how do you come up with a plan to make your courses up to date?
Yeah, so that's quite interesting. I guess that there's a couple different sides to it. One side of it is that, like, normally I'd have, so say for example, I have, so what I was gonna say is, like, along with the courses, I always have like GitHub repository and all of that. And if you're just working on a Flutter application and a new Flutter release comes out, for the most part, you just run dart fix apply, and then you go and update all the package versions, sort out some of the conflicts, work out if APIs have changed, and if it's not a gigantic app, like, you can probably maybe get away with 1 day of work, and sometimes even less, and then your code is up to date. With the video courses, it's obviously more difficult, because once you recorded it, it's not just a case of updating the source code. And even the source code, I basically go back. So the way I decided works best for me is, every single lesson that I have in the course, I make a commit if I make changes. And so I have also the diff for every lesson that is covered in the course. And so when there are updates coming out, I go back to lesson number 1, and I kind of fix all the API changes going forward, and then I kind of do this sort of interactive rebase and make sure that the code is as it should be. And then the painful part is going back to the video content and the notes and figuring out, oh, okay, so if this syntax has changed over here and this type is no longer called this but that, then I have all these bunch of videos which we showed the different way. And so it's very much a judgment of, I'm going to replace portions of the videos maybe, or sometimes if you see the things I do, it's a bit crazy as well. Like, sometimes I would cut little screenshots of the line where the code changes, and then I paste it as an overlay on the video, and then make sure it looks all right, so I don't have to record the whole video again. So a lot of things like that, and on top of that, what seems to happen as well is, when people then try to run the code, sometimes they can't build it on a certain platform for whatever reason. So then I try to have FAQs, and because like it's just a case of people's development setup environment can be different from mine, and so that's how you end up often in a rabbit hole down on Stack Overflow and trying to figure out why does it not work for me, kind of thing. so these days I try to keep like an FAQ and like all those resources that go with the course, so that people hopefully can find those easily and don't get too frustrated. So I guess between like the conjunction of all these different types of effort, then the content is still kind of relevant and up to date. Obviously, because they are big courses, if a new big release comes out, I'm not gonna have everything ready the next week, or I try, but it's not always possible. Um, so yeah, it's a lot of work. Um,
Yes.
yeah,
It is. So, well, speaking of this, then if you spend 10 months creating one course, then this course needs to do very well. That gives you a very good money, right? So that if you want to just have it as a career, do
yeah,
you like, well, I'm not asking about like making money stuff, but what I'm gonna ask is, does it really like come this way? Like you spend or invest 10 months and then just release something. And what if it doesn't work? I mean, how do you make sure these kinds of stuff after like doing that for years? I'm just asking.
yeah,
What kind of strategy usually you do to make sure that, investing of couple of months, it just
yeah,
doesn't, at least it goes somewhere. You know what I say?
yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think a big part of it is it's at the end of the day, a lot of it is about the size of your audience and how many people you have that regularly receive your content, and you can do the maths. And once you launch one course, you have a track record of like when you're planning the next course, you have a good idea about probably how many sales you're gonna get, and like um, so you can do the maths. So I guess it gets a bit tricky when you decide that maybe you're gonna do different pricing or different type of course. But yeah, with this course, I tried to first of all ask the audience what they wanted me to cover. I had an idea, but I just wanted to reinforce that. And then once you have a structure and content that you feel based on your data is what people want, um, then it's a case of, I mean, at the time when I launched this course, I went all in and I spent 3 4 months kind of, it's not just the content either. Like there's the landing page, there's kind of there's a lot that goes into making a landing page that kind of gives all the information that people need to make an informed decision, which is an art in itself, and that's something that I do spend the time doing for each course. So so yeah, the 10 months include, I guess, the production, but also the marketing that goes with it, and all these kind of activities. But yeah, I mean, this one went really well when I launched last year. And so off the back of that, I know that if my audience size stays roughly the same, which is normally the case, in fact, like if I keep publishing free content, normally more people sign up. Then every new launch, I can see that I guess if I keep the same price and the audience is the same, more or less, the sales are going to be similar. Uh, so I guess it's reaching that point where you've done enough work to both grow the audience and kind of create the enough interesting content that they trust you with it. And so when at the end of the day, it ends up being numbers game, and if you do have enough subscribers and enough people on your list. One thing that in fact I always do when I prepare these courses is before I launch, I put up the landing page with the waitlist sign up, and that's also a way to validate. Like if I create a landing page where I explain fairly well what the course is going to be about and what content it will have, if I do that and publish it 3 months before I launch the course, and I can see that I get enough signups, that's also a good sign that people are probably going to be interested in that. So, and the other thing that I do, because it takes me so long, I try to, in a way, make it work to my advantage. I will then go and maybe record half of the course content and then launch when half of it is ready. And then I will say, so for example, one of my other courses, which I just launched a couple of months ago, is Flutter and Firebase, which is kind of follow up from the previous one. And so back in January, I launched the kind of landing page for this, and I recorded roughly 40% of the course. And then on launch day, I made it, even before that, on all the emails, I made it quite clear that this is what people are going to get on launch day, and the rest is kind of coming soon, and giving some kind of guesstimate about when I'm going to publish the remaining modules. And so I guess that gives me a way to start getting sales at that point without having to complete the entire course. And I think, I guess some people expect that from me now in terms of what are the timelines. They know how long it takes me to do courses. So if they're happy with it and they buy it, then I always try to make it clear in advance, like with the emails, how long it should take for the rest of the content to be available. So I guess it's also about communication with the audience, just trying to make them understand things clearly. Not It's never about kind of cheating them into, oh, buy 10% of the course and good luck getting the rest of it. Like some
That's great.
instructors do early sales and then they disappear. But I think that is one thing that can permanently damage your brand. And so because I mean, for the long run, I would not dream of doing that. I just prefer to be kind of transparent and tell people what to expect, and then I give them regular updates as well if they're on the wait list.
Yeah.
And after they sign up and buy the course, I also keep sending updates about what's coming next and all of that. So it's just about having the frequent communication so people know what to expect, and that kind of helps build trust a bit more.
Mhm. Interesting. So, Andrea, I think you created lots of courses, don't you? So some of them probably are pretty old and some of them are pretty new. So the last two ones I think you just showed us.
Yeah.
Do you have a plan to release or like publish new courses? And maybe before this question, how
Yeah.
did you get your idea of around like creating courses? Like what kind of topic, like how do you come up with the topic, let's say? Is it because of the demand that you get from your audiences, or is it because that you feel, oh, this is lacking in the community, you know?
Mm. Yeah, it's a mix of things. So, for example, one thing that I do is, I guess I get feedback from various different channels. Like I said, I have a Slack community. Maybe I can even show you some of that. So, I have. Yeah, I have a Slack community where I kind of go in and help people with whatever questions they might have. Then inside it, have different channels for questions, and some of the channels are for the course content itself. So if they have a question about that, and this is one of the things that takes me quite a bit of time to keep running and try to be on top of it. But it helps in getting feedback about really understanding what people are struggling with. I think at the time when I started recording these courses, I also was running training sessions for people from time to time. And so I would see what kind of topics they were struggling with. So that also goes into the feedback section, I guess. Then one thing that I found quite useful is when I'm on Twitter, like sometimes I share tips, sometimes I'm trying out ideas as well, and I see what comments I get for that. And I found Twitter is very good for that. Even LinkedIn these days, to get pretty quick feedback on ideas, because you just have to post something. Like when I do it on Twitter, I try to have I guess yeah, when I do it on Twitter, I try to maybe put tips there and with images, screenshots, and then I see how much interaction I get. I see what questions people raise, and sometimes if there is a lot of questions around a certain topic, I would say, okay, the next step is probably to create an article about it, go more in depth, and it's often the case that it's hard to really cover something in a tweet or even a thread with all the nuance that goes with it. But I guess the Twitter idea is kind of, I guess it's how do you get immediate feedback on something.
Yeah.
So I use a bit of that. I also cross-post some of my articles on the Flutter Reddit subgroup, and there also, I mean, Reddit is an interesting community in terms of the comments that you get, but you also get a lot of valuable feedback there as well. So I just try to kind of take all this and structure it and put it somewhere in Notion, and then that helps a lot with coming up with the content.
Great.
So yeah, that hope that answered the questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
But sounds good. So, as I can see right now, you have a list of courses. You want to quickly talk about the existing courses and maybe future courses?
Yeah. Actually, you were also asking about the older ones. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. Like, so the latest ones that I made, so these are made over the last year, Foundations and Firebase course. So those ones are like up to date with the latest Flutter. And these are some of the older ones that I made. So like in 2020, maybe I made the Dart course and the animations one the year after. So I think back then I had a bit of a different take on things, and especially this Dart one was for beginners. And so like this one is one of those courses where I had it on Udemy. I decided to then bring it into my website, but I didn't. It was still for beginners, so I kept like a low price. And now Dart 3 just came out and it's no longer up to date, I guess, with the latest like records and patterns features and all that. So I'm thinking about when I will get the chance to do that, but then I had to start thinking as a content creator there, because this course at the moment the price is so low. If I invest the time in kind of bringing it up to date to all the latest stuff, then I probably need to do something about the pricing, which is not something that is a concern if I know that the price is higher in the first place. So there is, I mean, there is an element there of trying to be as helpful as possible with the people. But as a business owner, I also had to think about return on investment. And so you had to balance it. And that's why I realized that I had to somehow go higher in pricing if I want to create courses that I can keep up to date in the long term. Otherwise, it's a bit hard to make that work. And along with that, I guess, is the idea that video courses are generally harder to keep up to date, and also not everyone likes that format, and I can see the reason why. And sometimes, especially like some of the more experienced developers, they will just go and find the documentation. Like sometimes people will prefer to just find their way through things, ask questions where relevant, find the resources that they need. It's obviously never like a linear journey where you find the answer right away, but I guess it's a skill as well to be able to navigate all the, I guess, resources that people have to find the answers that they need. But in terms of course experience, I definitely think there's scope for doing something else other than video. And obviously, the two things that are most popular are video courses and books. And I guess it's the same thing for books. I know the Ray Wendell, like I think they changed name recently, but like they have all those books like Flutter Apprentice and all those, which are kind of very good, and it's definitely a different type of format. With books, I guess it's hard as well. Like sometimes if they are long, they can get a bit dry, and following it's not always as engaging. So I'm actually okay, let's reveal the secret. But I'm basically building a new course platform myself, which hopefully I don't have ETA for that because it's quite a bit of work, because I had to replicate a lot of the kind of things that go into a course platform in terms of like video navigation structure, basically building it entirely. I'm not using Flutter because it needs to be, it's basically a multi-page application, so quite a different stack. But like I got to a point where I think I had the resources to invest in creating a better learning experience. So looking forward, I'm going to, once the platform is ready to go, I'm gonna move over all the courses to that platform, bring all the people that are already enrolled over to that platform as well. And then I'm gonna have a lot more flexibility in terms of creating the kind of content that I'd like. And I think having a kind of a mixed format, like where I think it's just a case that sometimes video does better, sometimes text does better, and sometimes having a little code playground is the best thing to do. And being able to mix and match all those formats, I think it can be quite effective, but there aren't really many platforms that allow that at the moment. So yeah, that's something that will be coming up at some point.
Well, so we're gonna follow you. So I'm definitely put all the links for following, checking out Andrea's link and like Twitter, LinkedIn, and stuff in the comment below. So please take a look at that. So Andrea, maybe we should wrap it up. And maybe my last question is, and then you can also say your last words afterwards, is if someone right now wants to start creating course, so what kind of advice you want to give to that person?
So I think with technology, things change all the time, but what that also means is that there are a lot of trends that can be quite hot at any given time. So I think there is value in picking up one of those trends and following it. So when I started, I was an iOS developer, and there were some very established educators on the iOS community who were already doing a lot of really good content and better than what I could make. But Flutter was new. So I was early on in that game, and I got better as a creator as Flutter got bigger. So being on that trend helped because there was already interest in the technology, and so by just being one of the many creators that share content about it, that's easier to get, I guess, engagement because it's a hot topic. So I think that helped. And the thing that there's this saying that goes around with indie makers that first time creators think about the product first, and second time creators think about the distribution first. And that is so true. Like if you want to be a content creator, I would almost say, yeah, just start posting a lot of free stuff first before you even think of making a paid product. And because you need to get that feedback back from the audience that whatever you're making, it's working. And if you and also experiment with different types of formats, and hopefully you'll come across something that maybe it's unique about your style and about the way you're presenting that content that resonates well with the audience. And that's when you know that it's a good time to kind of double down and create more on that. And that's how you start getting subscribers and start getting more people interested. And then once you feel comfortable with that, and everyone, I guess, has a different, I guess, risk level that they're willing to accept, then you can say, okay, now I can invest the energy to create a course with that content. But yeah, I think definitely doing a lot of, I wouldn't even necessarily say a lot, but for a sustained period of time, testing that you can create content for free is a good test to see, first of all, if you like being a creator, because it's not for everyone, and it can get repetitive as well. So you have a lot of things, I guess, to prove to yourself, and you have a lot of things that you have to find out if people are interested in. And if you can tick those two boxes, then yeah, I think you can start creating paid content and kind of see where that takes you. And yeah, I mean, there's so many things to learn along the way. And I guess developers are normally very good with the coding side of things. But yeah, running a business is different. There's definitely, like, you got to learn marketing and sales. You got to learn, like, I mean, eventually it just boils down to create things that are valuable to people and get that value across. So if you say that like that, you're no longer saying marketing as a buzzword. You're actually saying, yeah, how do you create content that is valuable for people and that they will want more of. So yeah, I guess hopefully that sums it up.
Thank you very much, Andrea, for joining this show and sharing your journey to creating content, especially for Flutter developers. I know that there are many people who probably wants to start creating content, but they don't know where to start. And some people started and then they found it very frustrating and maybe like time consuming. And the advices that you gave today is invaluable. Thank you very much. And for audiences, so all the links is in the comment below for sure. Also, Andrea has created a special coupon or discount code for everyone who is willing to, from this show, wants to go and buy the courses. So you can also find that on the comment below. So anything else you want to share, Andrea?
Yeah, I think it's content creation is a very interesting way to, I think, grow in a different way to what is the traditional path for developers. But I also want to say that there are many directions that you can take this into. Like for me, creating courses was what I found was the right thing to do. But a lot of the time, if you create a lot of content that resonates with people, a lot of opportunities will come your way, like your DMs, your emails, and it's up to you, I guess, at that point to choose which things you want to take on. But yeah, I think being visible out there, especially when at a time where in the industry there's it's like there's layoffs, there's people struggling to find work. I think it helps a lot. It's not one dimensional, basically. That's what I'm saying. You can do that, and you can get a lot of feedback from the content you create, and opportunities will come your way as well. So it's a way of finding luck, if you want to call it that way.
Sounds amazing. All right. Thank you very much, Andrea. And thank you, everyone, for watching this show. I hope that you enjoyed this show about creating content. And let us know if you have any questions from Andrea in the comment, or maybe you can join his Slack or somewhere else that you can find him on Twitter or LinkedIn and ask him directly question. He's always open. I know he's pretty active and responsive. Thank you very much again, Andrea, and I wish you a very pleasant day. And for all of you who are watching, good day, night, wherever you are.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure, and hopefully it was helpful. Yeah, thank you.